Hello, Rodney. Rodney, how are you?
Good, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Oh, you look good. Beard looks really nice. I like it.
It, it's there.
It is there. Look at you, and you got your sign up in the back.
Yeah, got my sign finally put in our new office, so it's I'm official now.
You are official. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, are those awards behind you? Is that, I'm just saying.
Yes, there are President's Club trips that we've had for every year. Is our top salespeople get to go to the Caribbean somewhere? It's pretty nice.
Well, and I know you're a very humble man, and just you deserve that. So good for you. Hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. If you drop by to see us, if you're seeing this on a replay, that's just fine too. We'd love to have you. So what Rodney and I are doing these days is we're going to do real estate news updates, and there's always current affairs going on, and so we want to stay on top of that for you. That's what it's about. And for those of you that visit, you can chime in and ask questions. But we will just want to say something right up front. I am a real estate agent. He's a lender, and neither of us are trying to sell anything. We're just professionals in our job, and we're just sharing information. Hopefully, this goes across the country or around the world, wherever it goes. But our only motivation here is just to help you understand more what's going on. Does that sound right, Rodney? Does that sound good for
That's
you?
it. That's it.
Good. Um, here's what there's a so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bounce around, not bounce around. We're going to pick some topics to talk about, but we're not going to be a specific topic for any particular show. Rodney, can you test your sound for me, please? Just say hello, test, test.
Hello.
Oh, very,
Test.
very good, very good. The picture's great today. But we're going to just pick several topics. There's nothing in particular. If you have a question, pop it in the chat. Of course, we'll answer it if we can. But in the meantime, we just want to cover things that seem interesting. And so one of the things that I saw an article the other day, and I think, Rodney, you might have seen it too. Do you get this question a lot? Are we in a housing bubble? Do you get that question frequently?
Yes, and it's not only did I get the question, it's just like every article in the paper is talking about it. Yes, it's exactly. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, here's an article that was put out a while back, and it says here's three graphs to show there isn't a housing bubble. And now Rodney and I both lived through the crash of '08, and so we have real experience. We've gone through it. We know what it looks like, know what it feels like. We know what it seems like to the people that's actually happening to, and that's really the tragic part of it. Is there was a lot of people who are in tough positions. And it's no wonder that anybody that's in real estate asks if that's going to be repeated, because it was an ugly deal. It really was. A lot of people these days are too young to remember it, I think, probably, that they weren't into it. But so here's a couple of graphs, a couple of ideas. And the first one is the supply of homes is nothing like the last time relative to 2008 in the housing bubble. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rodney? Or
Yeah, exactly. The one of the biggest differences right now is, when they talk about a bubble, right? Is it going to? I guess the way I look at it, Andy, is like, is it going to correct itself? Is are we in store for a bubble to burst, or are we in store for a bubble to correct itself? Right?
Mhm.
In '08, a bubble burst.
Right.
Um,
So the difference
you know,
being what?
Well, I think there's a huge difference this time going around. There's a lot of differences. One, the mortgage rates. Mortgage rates is a lot driving this slowdown of mortgage request, right? So that's the huge difference between now and in 2008. 2008 rates were still low, but like inflation now. Inflation has hurt our consumer confidence, has hurt people looking and saying, okay, it's hurt their pocketbook. They
Right.
may not be able to afford as much as they did, a year ago. Well, they can't, right? So, it's, house payments maybe $1,000 more than it was a year ago just because of the rates and the property increasing.
Right.
So, but there's still a good demand right now for properties,
Right.
um, unlike it was in '08.
Of course,
But
what I
to
remember being in it, and I was just I was just 3 years into real estate, and that started happening. Now, none of us real estate professionals that I could point to actually knew it was happening until we were deep into it. It's like, what happened this last 6 months? How did what? That's when you'd have chatter in the back offices of, are you getting this? Is this happening to you? And so when they mention supply of homes, the way I see that, tell me if you agree, is that short sales and foreclosures and the number of people needing to get out of their houses was in the millions. There was 2.3 million foreclosures. It was nuts. There was a lot of houses being that were on the market. So when you have that kind of choice, when you have that kind of supply, there weren't enough buyers, and naturally the prices had to go down. Well, what is it that they talk about pretty much every day in the news is the shortage of housing supply these days.
Mhm.
So the difference from then to now is there were tons of houses for sale back in the day, back then, and now it's short. It's getting better. It's getting better,
Right.
but it's short. And so we're talking about the three things that are telling us that it's not a bubble that's getting ready to burst. The second thing that I'm seeing on the list here is I'm going to try something, see if this will work. Bear with me here. I'm going to do. Oh, good. Look at us. So the second one is going to be your strength, Rodney, is that the lending standards today are way different than they were back in 08, 09.
Right. Back in '08 and '09, they were taking those B and C loans that you could just say, okay, well, stated income loans. They were doing those at 100%. And as soon as the market went backwards an inch, you had all these people buying at 100%, and they were buying on some crazy, even some negative amortization loans, loans that were fixed for 2 years, and then they were going to adjust to a skyrocket rate, right?
Right.
So the difference between today is people have more equity than they've ever had before in the history, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of people over the last several years who had owned a home, and so they've got tons of equity in that house.
So even
So
if they
they're
got
not
in trouble, even if they got in trouble, they could sell and be
right.
in
They
good
could
shape.
sell. They could sell and make some money and get out. Okay, well, I may have to go rent or live with a family member or something, whatever it is. But back then they were upside down in these houses. Um, so the walk away, the person just there was millions that just walked away from their house.
Yeah.
They could have stuck it out, right? But they're like, well, I'm upside down in it. That's crazy. I'm just going to walk away from it.
Wasn't that called
And
deed in lieu? Was that called deed in lieu where they call them handed over the keys and you just walk away?
well, you could have done it like that, but they're walking away. They wasn't calling their servicer and saying, "Hey, here's the keys," and
Right.
that doing it formally. They were just walking away. And since we had all those bad loans and then no equity, that was why that bubble burst. Today's bubble is we still have a decent demand for
Right.
homes, and people are starting to be able to go and do inspections and things like that. But the majority of people have a ton of equity, and if they get in trouble, they'll sell, or else they won't sell and keep making their mortgage payment. That's the huge difference between now and '08 is um, almost everybody in their house has what's called a qualified mortgage. It means that the lender went through and looked at pay stubs, bank statements, and they actually, qualified for that mortgage versus what was going on in '08.
Right. And that's the thing that I see different is that, and I think I'm saying the same thing, but just a different way, is that the buyers that are out in the market for homes these days are actually qualified versus
Yes.
no doc loans and that kind of stuff that people were like 2 paychecks away from losing their house after just buying the thing. You
Right,
know,
exactly. Yeah, one paycheck away. Right. They should never have been able to buy it because they never qualified with it with their actual pay stubs and things like that.
right. And to be fair, I was one of the ones that in '05 got bought a house in Brentwood. It was a no doc loan, and they
Hey,
just said, "Well, how much you guys earning?" And we went, "Well, this much." Okay, and they
now
sold it.
there was a time where those no doc loans that you know where I was selling basically Fannie Mae products. I never had those. I call them B and C products. I never had those products like that. Every product we always sold went on the secondary market, but the secondary market had loans that if you had a high enough credit score, you could state your income, and they had some little tolerance box, but it was like whew. But
Right.
glad that stuff's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it gives us, I mean, look at the foreclosure rate these days. It's like 200,000 for the country. It's negligible. And I don't mean
Well,
to downplay, I hate it for anybody that's going through it. I really do. I've seen that happen, but it's a negligible amount. And so we're okay. And there's a document here I'm looking at based on what you're talking about. Mortgage holders gained $2.8 trillion in tappable equity over the past 12 months. Almost $3 trillion. That's a lot of dollars.
well, yeah, that and see that to me is the biggest difference. I mean, when you have somebody at 0% equity or a negative, they may owe, let's say they owe 500,000 and their house is worth, 450. You know, now you take that same house and it may be worth 650, and they're like, well, I still have 100,000 equity or whatever, or 150.
Right. Yeah.
So they're not going to walk away from that.
Yeah. No kidding. And so the bottom line is that in terms of availability, there's not that many. There's plenty of houses, but there's going to be there. It's a strong market, meaning healthy market. We don't have a glut of available houses, so the prices are going to be stable. And the final thing that it says is simply that the foreclosure activity is non-existent compared to then. And so, because back in the day, um, I talked to a lot of new agents that they haven't, and I'm not saying making a judgment, but I went through a time when, and I'm not laughing because it's funny. I can't believe we went through it. That for a couple of years there, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, we'd go out and get listings, and we'd tell the seller, well, you can sell, and it's only going to cost you $20,000. And they felt like they got away with one, and that was without closing costs, without all the stuff, because otherwise it was going to be a short sale or something along those lines. And that was weird days. I remember coming out of that. It was a long stretch of having to share that news, which sometimes they could, sometimes they couldn't. That's where your short sales would come from. I remember the first one that we were able to give them what we thought would be a profit, and I was like, "Hey, it's a good day,"
Yeah, yeah. The craziest thing I just remember, it seems like every seller was a bank. Back then, it was every single seller was somebody holding that mortgage. Wasn't a normal transaction. It was always dealing with a bank or a lender or something as the seller. And I was like, goodness, are we ever gonna get out of this mess?
It makes it really complicated. I
Yeah.
had, if you don't mind, I'm gonna bring up a story that probably affects agents more than lenders, but it'll be a short story. For anybody that for anybody that's been thinking about selling their house, thinking about agents versus iBuyer companies like Zillow did, they're out of the business now. There's another one called OfferPad, and there's another one called Open Door.
Mm-hmm.
And just today, I think it was just today, August 1st, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, fined Open Door, the company that's an iBuyer, $62 million over false advertising. Here's what they're saying. Now, will this make a big difference in the grand scheme of things? Maybe, maybe not. But here's the point I want to be able to make for anybody that's thinking about selling. The idea of an iBuyer is that if you have a house to sell, an iBuyer says, I'll give you X number of dollars and you can scoot on out of here. They'll give you cash, no showings. There may be an inspection, but nothing dramatic, generally speaking. If there is and items are found, they make you pay for them. It's not awesome, but that's the way iBuyers are supposed to work. They're really convenient for people that don't want to have the showings, that don't want to fix their house up, that kind of stuff. But they were touting the profitability of how profitable it is, how much money you'll make with Open Door. Well, the FTC made a claim, and there's a lawsuit and all that sort of stuff. I'm not a legal guy. Bottom line is they slapped Open Door with a $62 million lawsuit, and it sounds like Open Door is going to accept it. And here's what they said. And I'm going to read this because if anybody here is in marketing, you'll get where I'm coming from. This is the Open Door response to that. It says, while we strongly disagree with the FTC's allegations, meaning the lawsuit, our decision to settle with the commission will allow us to resolve the matter and focus on helping consumers buy, sell, and move with simplicity, certainty, and speed. The reason I bring that up is that right there is their the value proposition. Moving forward, if you see Open Door, chances are good we'll help you sell your house fast, simply, with certainty, and that's going to be their new marketing slogan instead of making a bunch of money. So
what
for anybody,
what did they get fined for? What was their practices they were doing?
they were touting the idea, they were alluding to the fact that you could make the most money, that you could profit the most using Open Door. And as an agent, we've been saying all along that Open Door's idea, because the market was rising, is they're going to buy your house, put a little paint on it, which is what they did, which is fine, and then they'd flip it right away and make a profit. Right. But if that's the case, unless for people that were unwilling or unable financially to fix their properties up, paint and upgrades and stuff like that, makes total sense. If you couldn't do that. But for anybody else, they've got to make a profit, and it starts with how much they buy the house for. So, and that's why Zillow got in trouble, because they were they did overpay for houses for a while, and well, you know where they are now. They're not in the iBuying business.
Yeah, they stopped that division. It was earlier. They had already got busted on it, so it just took Open Door a few minutes. And so Open Door, basically, I got you. Those are I don't know. Those are not the greatest deals ever. I mean, they're not. Just like they did, they're out of the business now. So it just tells you.
Well, Zillow is, Open Door's not, and all it is. And I'm perfectly fine with them as long as they're telling what they're selling is ease of sale. You don't have to paint. You don't have to do anything. You just write a contract, pack your bags, and you'll leave with whatever dollar amount we agree to, which may or may not be the most that you could get for the house, which is the whole argument.
Right. Right. But anybody, I wouldn't understand anybody's situation to take that over just a good, say you're in Kalamazoo, Missouri, Michigan, wherever Kalamazoo is, right? I mean, I would rather have a good real estate agent that's going to get me the most for my house. And, if my pain point is, listen, I'm old or whatever, I don't want to do nothing to this house, they can handle that, right? I mean, they can
Right.
bring in somebody to do that, or they can figure out a way to get it financed or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I would just add to your point is that, find you a professional in your area. These people are right. Just think about what they're trying to do. They're taking your house and they're going to flip it. So what does that mean? They got to buy it undervalue a little bit to make some
Right.
money. That's
Yeah.
their whole goal. So
And that's the whole. I mean, for anybody thinking about that, and again, it doesn't make it a bad deal. If convenience versus money is what you want, that might be a good option. But I would say, like I do with anybody, kind of look at it in a spreadsheet. What make comparisons A and B. Look at that versus a couple of realtors or whatever. Just look at your options. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
But this
yeah,
the reason it's a big deal is that for us professionals, they are always seen as not coming. People weren't making as much money as they could. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
I'm sure it's a fine company. They mean well. I don't know. I'm trying
yeah.
to mitigate any problems going down the road. That's me.
Well,
So
yeah, I just don't see the circumstance where a good professional in your area couldn't do a better job than somebody trying to flip that house.
yeah, yeah,
Open, to my knowledge, Open Door is not in the business of paying top dollar for your house, is what you want for a seller. And they're not in the business of keeping these houses and renting them out like that, like a lot of hedge fund people are doing that are buying investment properties for their portfolios. So it's like, yeah, it's a slick system. And
right.
if somebody can say, oh, it was very easy, but so that's what real estate agents. That's what you do, Andy. You make it easy on people. That's what all the real estate agents across the country do. I
Yeah.
can't. You know what I'm saying? I just don't see the attraction of it myself.
That's
Um,
really, I've never heard it put better. I've never heard it put this way and we're not, folks, we're not slamming Open Door. We're not. We're just making a point about this happened today. But what you said was they're not in the business of giving sellers top dollars for their house. That is,
right.
I'd like to
Yeah.
needle point that and put it on my fridge or something.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. My opinion's my opinion, and it's free, by the way. So. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, and somebody could have. There's probably thousands of customers that used Open Door and happy with them, but I'm willing to bet if they took their time, found somebody good in their area, that they'd be better off with a good local agent.
So, that was really good, Rodney. I'm telling you, that was really good. Was there any particular thing you wanted to discuss? Because I've got another one here that I thought would be interesting.
No, let's talk about it. What you got?
Okay. I'm looking at this article, and it says 3 reasons to buy a home in today's shifting market, which if you're in the market, you may be wanting to get confidence that it's a good time. This isn't a song and dance about rates or anything. It's not. It's important, but it's not everything. So in these 3 reasons to buy a home in a shifting market, here's what it's got, and I can confirm this. A couple of, not too many months ago, when I would go out with buyers, there would be nothing. You couldn't get an offer in sideways. It was multiple offers. It was cash offers. I mean, they were giving away the farm to win a house. But in this shifting market, number one is, and I'll show it this way. There we go. Number one is as buyer demand moderates, and it's because interest rates by the feds has gone up. Money's a little harder to come by, and that's lowered the buyer demand in the market. I think you'd agree with that, probably, Rodney, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So as
100%. Yeah, the rates have significantly affected um, the buyer request for a mortgage.
Oh yeah, right. So applications is down. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, nationwide, it's yes, it's yes, it is
Got
low.
it. Got it. So number one, as you can see here, it says that as buyer demand moderates, you're going to see the intensity of bidding wars ease. And I'm telling you that that's absolutely the truth. I wrote a contract a few days ago, and there was no competition. Well, that hadn't happened in a year and a half.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you that even I think that the listing agent was actually surprised to get an offer. We wanted the house, but they were surprised to get it that fast. But and that's because part of what's happening with buyers and I think agents too a little bit because I sold a listing recently and the this may sound complicated. I'll try to make it not so. Buyers and agents have been trained over the last year and a half that if a house becomes available, get your money together, get in fast, put your offer in, make it significant, over ask if you can, if you want to win the contract. That's what we've been trained to do for the last couple of years. There's been a lot of losing going on because people weren't fast enough. Well, I put up a listing about a month ago, and we did have an offer the first day. It was over ask. They didn't ask for anything. And we were pleased, very pleased to get it. We were very pleased to get it. But that is acting more like it used to be. These days, if you're a buyer, you might find that you don't have to be in quite so much of a hurry and you can actually ask for and get concessions from the seller. I'm going to caution that and say, if this is the house of your dreams and you can't live without it, buy it. Don't mess around. But if it's not the house of your dreams or it's just you really like it, you might be able to negotiate. So with buyers these days, I bet you're finding out from the agents you work with, Rodney, that it's closer to asking price than it was in the past.
Yes, 100%. Like you said, I've still seen people. Um, when we talked earlier about the bubble and the crash, right now I am not seeing. I am seeing people lower their sales price, but
Yeah.
I'm not seeing appraisals go backwards. I'm not seeing housing prices go down.
Mm-hmm.
There's still enough um, action for that, for us to remain steady there. But to your point, it's you're exactly right. It's it's much easier for a buyer. They can get inspections,
Right.
and inspections right now. If you've that's something that's been making these folks back out of contracts. There's the highest rate of contract cancellations right now than there has been in several years because it's not a race to get this contract anymore.
Right.
It and like you said, you still put one on the market and you got a over ask price one day, that minute, but you didn't get 25 of them,
That's
right?
correct.
That's
That's
the difference. Is you got one versus 25.
that's right. That's what
25.
I'm trying to say.
So things are still selling, but people have time to look and get their inspections and things like that, and it's makes it a much that that. It just lost the home buying experience, in my opinion, Andy. When these people, like I had customers that were coming in from out of town, they ain't even seen they wouldn't even see the house. They wouldn't
Right.
even have time to see it. They're like, just hey, have the realtor put an offer in on 50 over asking price or whatever it is, and that all they've seen is online pictures. They don't know. And I was like, man, that's just so weird to me. It's like people should be able to walk through a house with not 73 cars and be able to go through the negotiation process, whether it's full price or not, or getting concessions, but they should have time to negotiate and talk about it.
Yeah. Well, here's a quick story for you. And I think if you, I've spoken before about Reddit. It's just a place where it's a huge social website. Reddit has got everything on there. Excuse me. One of the more common things that homebuyers were talking about was what you were talking about, Rodney, was buying without an inspection. And there's a lot of buyers out there. God bless them. They got their house, but the house needed a little more work than maybe they were expecting, and
Right.
so there was maybe a little buyer's remorse. And I mean, they did what they had to do to get the house. I get that. But what we're trying to say today is, you don't have to do that. You can get your inspections. You can make sure the house is in good shape. We put an offer on a multi-million-dollar house recently, and it did not pass inspection, believe it or not. To look at it, you would think this is a palace, and it was. But once you start going through the inspection, it looks good, but
The
the
palace had
inspection.
issues.
What's that?
The palace had some warts on it.
It did. It really did. I'm glad that they were protected in that way. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for that. And so the final thing, the third reason that it's a good time to buy, or at least strongly consider it, is that the inventory is increasing. And that's what Rodney and I are talking about here, really big time, is that as there's a lot of the sellers are coming on the market thinking they're going to make a big splash. Well, that doesn't happen as much as it used to. And so there's more and more houses that take longer days on the market. And so the inventory is climbing. And what that means is you as a buyer, you have options. Roddy just told a story about somebody coming into town. I don't have time to see it. Just put a contract on it, Now you've got choices, and what a good thing that is, So those are three pretty good reasons as far as I can tell.
Yeah, the worst part of listing I think I'd ever seen is the agent said only the people could view the property. You had to submit an offer to purchase if you wanted to view it. So you would have to have an actual contract to purchase it before you viewed the house. And I was like, well, so I guess they're just going to take, I mean, that's just how crazy it got, which, luckily I haven't seen that anymore. So,
But they
yeah, if
sold
you
it,
didn't
I
even
bet,
have
didn't they?
oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, I still think it's a great time to sell. I mean, I think it's a great time to sell, and I don't know if there's going to be a better time to buy than right now. In 5 years, prices are probably going to be higher than they are right now. So,
Right.
The sting in your mortgage rate right now is going to last for a minute, but you can always get out of that, with a refinance or whatever 4 or 5 years
Right.
down the road when the market turns.
Right.
So.
You got time for a couple more questions?
100%.
Okay. Here's a good one. And you just touched on it, so bear with me. I'm going to check something here. Sorry for the dead air. Sorry. Here's the question. Should you buy a home with inflation this high? And you touched on it, but this is a lot of people. I mean, that's going to be, frankly, I think question number one. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, keep in mind that this answer could change anytime. But right now, I 100% believe that it is still a good time to buy. And the reason I say that is I just think right now, if you go by, of course I know my area better than across the country,
Right.
but all these cities, really good cities like ours, are just very similar. Um, I think in 5 years, the house prices will be higher than they are today. Now, I don't think we're going to see that record, like houses doubling and going up 30 and 40%, but I think a modest gain over the next several years is in order, or, is what we'll see. So, yes, I think it's still a good time to buy. It's a good time to sell too. I still, although you may have to get an inspection and fix your plumbing or something, as a seller, but you're still getting top dollar, in my opinion, for that house.
Right.
So I think it's a good time to buy and sell. Now, if inflation has hurt your pocketbook so bad, that's a different story, right? If that extra $1,000 that you are now paying to go towards a mortgage payment is like, okay, I can't afford daycare, or I can't afford, I mean, your groceries are more expensive, gas is more expensive, everything is more expensive. So as long as the affordability is there, that is what has killed first time home buyers. These skyrocketing prices,
Right.
people coming in from all over, people flooding into these great cities from out of area. Have priced home buyers, they're gone, right? I mean, they just got left in the dust with all these cash offers and everything like that. How are they going to compete with cash only and all this, no inspections?
Right.
So, I'd like to see that come back some, where first time home buyers would enter the market, but it's, they've really got to check their pocketbook to make sure that they can sustain the affordability of that house for forever, right? You
Right.
don't want to buy, they don't need to buy the house and then be house poor and then like lose a paycheck and then and then lose it, right? Or have to have their parents sell it or whatever, So as
Right.
long as you can afford it, that's the biggest question.
And you
I think it would
really,
be a good time to buy.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I think it would be a good time to buy, as long as the affordability issue hasn't, the inflation hasn't impacted you to where you can still afford it.
Right. Well, and I think we started off the live stream with, we addressed the idea that in the last 12 months, equity grew by 2.8 trillion tappable equity.
Yeah,
So
I mean, yeah,
that's anecdotal evidence that it's a pretty smart move, for that. But it sounds like we're
right.
selling houses. We're not. The question is, um, should you buy when inflation is high? And what Rodney's saying is, if you can afford it, including the inflation situation, the answer is yes. Is that right?
100% yes.
Is that, I got one more good question for you. Rodney, I'm loving
Hey,
this.
we are selling something, just to not anybody on this site, right?
There
I
you
mean,
go.
somebody might be watching this in my favorite city, Kalamazoo. Down, what state is that in? Is
Kalamazoo,
that
Minnesota. Was that where that was?
is it Minnesota or Michigan? I don't know where it's
Michigan.
at.
Yeah.
Is it Michigan?
Yeah, it is Michigan.
I'm
So
looking at
this brings us to, and this would be a good question to end it on. And here's the question. It is, do you think home prices are going to fall? Now, that's a kind of a trick question. Because the way this article reads is, it says, think home prices are going to fall? Think again. That's basically what it says. Let's pop this up and show it. There we go. And that's what that says. And the point on that is, I think, more about definition. Would you probably agree with that? Hang on. There we go. What I
Yeah,
mean by that is, when you see videos and articles about prices dropping, what I want to make sure that's understood, at least that I understand it, is that when somebody lists a house for sale, the prices that are getting dropped is the initial listing price.
hmm
And that when it ultimately sells, it's probably not going to be less than it did last year. And that's what they're talking about, falling prices. Is that a good definition, you think?
Yes, I think yes. I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing people sell, uh, but it's still at the top. Still at the top market of previous sales, with maybe a slight increase, but they're not going backwards right now. Now, what would
Right.
you know? I know it's your last question. I'm not sure how much time you got, but it's like what, in my opinion, rates, we're getting close to 6%. Um, I think rates would have to just keep going up just a hair more, 7.5, and then we may start thinking about, okay, is that going to eliminate so many people that would we see housing go backwards? And that's a possibility. But
Yeah.
right now, if rates top out right here, um, inflation gets under control, our inventory's already coming back, this recession thing may be a little bit shorter lived than people have projected. And we could see normalizing, a normal, because mortgage rates aren't going to stay like this forever.
Yeah, but kind of I don't know if it's good news, but mitigating news is when you look at this chart here, it's talking about housing prices having gone up 18, 19, 20, 21%, over the course of a period of time. And even if they went backwards a little bit, I don't want anybody to lose money or anything. But when you're up 20%, you can take a bit of a
Right.
hit and be okay.
Exactly right. Because it's not going to go back. We've been going up for 3 or 4 years, we've been going up since since the crash in '08, honestly. So is it going to always do that? No, but it's like I just it's hard to predict the next 6 months, but I feel confident in saying 5 years from now, look,
Yeah.
these our home prices are going to be higher in most other city too. I just don't see um, the recession lasting crazy long, um, and stuff will start normalizing with these rates and all that stuff, and get some more activity going.
Right. And I think ultimately, because I just did a video on this the other day, is about inflation and recession. And I've been working hard to have a good understanding of that kind of stuff. And at some point, all we're looking for is balance. Jerome Powell said, what's it going to do to the price of houses? Well, we're not sure. I mean, those were his words. Basically,
Right,
I don't know. We'll see, which is pretty close to you're on your own. Give me a call when
right.
things start to fall apart. That's what it sounded like to me, at any rate. Um,
Yeah, and I say all this. All this is a caveat with the way things are right now. If rates drop 2%, you got a whole nother ball game. If they go up 2%, you got a whole nother ball game. So, if as this market changes, this is a fluid situation we're in, but the housing, we're in such good position with our equity over the last few years, uh, and the supply and demand is still good, and the job market in most of the country is unbelievable. And that's a job market actually drives mortgages, is a pretty good indicator forever for me, watching that stat. So when jobs are good, housing's usually good. But the the inflation that our government's created, is just kind of stifled it, just like they wanted to. You know.
right. Which is their point. You're trying to cool the thing off. I heard recently, I'm sure you did too, that from across the country, um, those there's the areas that were the hottest are at the greatest risk of moderating somewhat. The ones that really were off the charts in terms of value. Those are the ones that are to moderate the most. And then there was like 210 of them. And then the other 205, I guess they're metros maybe. but there's supposed to be more moderate. So I guess my point is, and what you said again is the reason I'm excited about this live stream, this dollars and cents every Tuesday, is you can't really have updated news every day, but once a week, if things happen, and it's so fluid, just like you said, Rodney, that we're going to be here every week, 1 o'clock on Tuesdays, trying to make sense of this, because what we're talking about today, the rules may have changed dramatically in a week.
Yes. I mean, as soon as rates go up, or goodness gracious, let's say China invades Taiwan or something. I mean, our economy is it's a little fragile right now. I mean, with all the stuff going on. So you never know. You never know what market conditions can change in a week. But I do know this, which is kind of crazy, is that you mentioned earlier in 2008, it took you 6 months to kind of figure out. But honestly, you can look back in 2000 at that time, and it's almost like you can pinpoint a day that light switch turned off and the market was dead. And I was like, man, it's just fast how the market changes like that. So that's it can change you can look back and say, man, I remember, July 15th or whatever it was, we just stopped getting calls. And that was the way it was in 2008. It was like you could point your finger at a day on the calendar and it's like, hey, the market's just stopped that day,
There it was, yeah. And we're working with, I'm seeing a lot of, there's a lot of new agents, because it's been a hot market. There's been quite a substantial growth in agents and everything. They haven't seen what we've seen. And you try to tell them, look, have your nest egg ready and, kind of get your marketing in place, because you're gonna need that. So what an interesting thing. There was something else I was going to tell you and flew out of my head. Can't think of what it was. But as news develops, I'm looking forward. We're going to keep this same format, I think, if that's okay with you, Rodney. I like this.
Oh, it's awesome, yeah.
The idea of touching on things that are that seem to be important of the day. And so everybody out there, thank you very much. If you're watching a replay, that's awesome. Leave us questions, comments, anything. We'll still get a hold of them. Rodney, you got any final words for us, buddy?
No, just appreciate your time, man. Enjoy spending time with you talking about the market.
Hey, that was fun. Rodney, thanks a lot. Everybody, we'll talk to you later now. Bye-bye.
See you.